everybody. This is Isaiah Diesel at RG Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm joined today with Scott Williamson. Is that right?
That's right.
And where are you calling out of us?
Right now I'm in Pensacola, Florida, which is like on the west end of Florida.
And west. How's the weather there right now?
Right now, it looks like I hear thunder rumbling in the background, so it may be a tumultuous downpour, but you never know in Florida. It's just like that, you know.
So before we get started, we usually like to do some kind of friendly fire round where I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions. Some of them are serious, some of them are satirical. So just try to answer these as quickly as you can, and then we'll get into the meat of the subject that we're going to talk about, okay? All right.
Sure.
No speeches, just answer them very quickly, okay? All right, so dog or cat?
Cat.
And coffee or tea?
Coffee.
All right. If you had to choose your best man off of any fictional game on any console, who would it be?
Mark Wahlberg.
No, a game, like a game character. Like
Mario. I thought you said an actor. Oh, Mario character. Oh,
no, any character. I'm just saying like Mario, any video game.
Video game character. I see what you mean. Only thing I think of is Pac-Man right now for some reason.
You probably eat everything. You probably eat everything.
Yeah, he eats every.
All right. How about this one? So if you got stuck on an island, what fictional action hero would you trust to get you off of that island?
Superman.
Okay. Superman just fly off of it. That's pretty funny.
That's right.
Okay. That's pretty good. Someone said Iron Man. Someone else said Tom Hanks from Castaway. That's pretty funny. All right. Next one. If the devil had a favorite band, who would it be?
Prodigy.
Oh, I like them. I think one of the guys died recently. From Prodigy.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
he sure did. Fire starter guy.
Yeah, that's like
sad, man. He was good.
Firestarter and I think Breathe. Those are like the ultimate. If I was gonna like get into a fight or in the UFC or something, I would definitely walk out to one of those two songs. So, speaking of UFC,
yeah.
Last question. Who's your favorite UFC fighter?
UFC fighter. Wow. I think Gracie. I'm going to go back to the classics, man.
Wow.
I think Gracie
That's
is
old school. All right.
Yeah.
So before we get started with some of the questions that I've sent you in advance, I was wondering if you could tell me where you rate on the docking scale from 1 to 7. 1 being like an absolute Christian or atheist, and 7 being
probably like a 5,
religion.
Maybe a 5.1, maybe
5.1, slightly. Okay. All right. So, so can you tell me first of all, if you do some kind of podcast, or I think you told me the other day you did one for 5 hours, but like, do you have your own channel, or do you, what exactly do you do?
Yeah, exploring epistemology. So that's really the goal of that show, is to encourage healthy skepticism in as many people as I possibly could. So there's a reason for the goal, of course, and it's connected to the fact that society, myself, my children, you, everybody, we all live in societies that make up people who hold certain values and beliefs. So, you know, these values and beliefs are obviously going to be reflected in the society and culture that we're going to live in, right? So if these values and beliefs are in fact informed by people that make up these societies, then it seems that these beliefs and values should be arrived at using good tools, the most effective tools possible to arrive at your beliefs. And that's just my contribution to society. So it's exploring epistemology. Epistemology is the theory of knowledge. It's how we come to know, or how do we believe what we do? Like, how do we connect the dots? How do we put it together? And we just explore that. A lot of people, including myself, sometimes believe things without good reason. Sometimes I sit back, and if someone were to question me on some belief or whatever, and I were to really answer a few fundamental questions, I'll be surprised to figure out, wow, I really don't have any good reasons for that belief. So I'm wondering, why do I believe it then? So it's kind of a psychological thing. And it kind of makes me aware that maybe I believe things because of an emotional impulse, or it just makes me feel good, or it's a fear involved, or there's a wanting or a hope involved in it, but there's really no logical grounding for it.
Right.
And so that's what this is all about, is just to explore it.
Yeah.
And people can decide for themselves whether they want to believe things for good reasons or not. That's totally up to them. But most people think they do.
So Scott, that being said, I want to ask you, I want to jump right. I do want to get back to that epistemology, because I think that's a word that's getting thrown around a lot lately, especially the street epistemology guy and other people. But yeah, I do want to add something to that, but just not in this section right now. But I do want to start off by asking you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important do you think it is for people to take time and discuss God or his possibility? Or is that something that should be done like internally or reflectively?
I think I would give it a really high mark, a 10 maybe, because I think that I think the God question kind of is just a really good example of how to explore epistemology and how to search why you believe in God or why you don't believe in God. Whatever your belief is about God can be revealed. And it kind of teaches you, for me, more important than just the question of whether God exists or not, or what is his goals, what is God's, thinking, or whatever the case may be. What's I find interesting, just subjectively to me, is just how do people come at their beliefs, whether they're a non-believer or a believer.
Right. I'm resisting right now, not wanting to go into the epistemology, because I do want to save that for later. So I do want to ask a follow-up question to that, because why is it that people are interested in exploring other people's epistemology? Because that's something that I really can't wrap my mind around as a believer. I mean, I'm a believer. You could understand why I would want to do that, especially people who don't believe. But I don't really get why people want to debate people on like what their belief is. It's like, you have your belief, that's fine. If you want to talk about it, you want to ask me about my beliefs, I'm more than happy to have. We've had a couple of hour-long talks. It's been great. But I really don't get why people make so much of an effort to try to go and disprove something that's, like, let's say, very sacred to someone. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I understand why people do it. I may not agree with why they do it in a lot of cases, but I think that it's all subjective to the person that engages, of course. But I think if you're referring mainly to like atheists or agnostics or skeptics, why do they want to attack people's beliefs? I think it's because of sport, and I think it's because of ego, and I think it's because of an emotional driver. You got to remember, a lot of atheists, a lot of them came out of religious background. And they come out of there angry, and they come out of there feeling duped. Right. So a lot of people may want to protect other people from that, or sometimes they want to work their anger out, and they have an axe to grind with people in general, and they never let it go for their whole life. They'll never let it go. And I know how that feels, because I was once very super religious, like very fundamental, and so I was angry, and it becomes a sport.
That's an interesting analysis. I'm a believer, and I interviewed a Black atheist guy who goes by Black Atheist online. And do you know him?
I've heard of him, and I've seen him in different chat groups as I jump in all these.
He's beyond obnoxious. I mean, easily the most obnoxious guest I've ever had. I didn't even air the episode, but at least at the beginning it was cordial. but I did ask him, like, why did he feel it was necessary to put his ethnicity, like, in the title, and why a lot of Blacks aren't atheists. And he told me because his opinion was that because Blacks have been very marginalized and very abused, that's been like one source of comfort for them. And that was something that, like, maybe because I'm not Black, I don't know. I never thought about it. So having this podcast, talking to different people, it's made me think about things from a different perspective. So I really appreciate what you just said right now. So thank you for that. Second question I have, and I do want to give a little bit of context for this, because I do believe that we're at a cusp of human evolution right now, which may not exactly be a good thing. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Fermi paradox about why there should be maybe more life on this universe, in this universe. And one of those solutions is maybe people get to a certain stage of evolution and then they just kill themselves off. We certainly have the power to do it right now. And if we're going to learn to live on this planet, I don't know, it's kind of like the internet has created an opportunity for us to communicate with each other, which is a really good thing. But it's also served something very bad, you know. People have opportunity to have a lot of disinformation, which is very dangerous. And then there's also the possibility people spreading a lot of really bad and dangerous ideas, such as Nazis using it to recruit people. So that being said, I want to ask you, what do you think about the current evolution of humans right now, and how mass media is available at everyone's fingertips? And what do you think the pros or cons of that? And in my conversation with Larry from the Atheist Digital Free Thought, I explained it like this: like 50 years ago, you would have no idea what someone across town in your hometown like thought. You would have to go and have a conversation with them. Now in 5 minutes, you could find out almost their opinions on everything. Just go to their Facebook page. And I mean, I found out within the last 10 years, like I have some cousins who have some very toxic ideas, you know, and friends. So what are your thoughts on that? Can you just break that down?
Yeah, I thought about that a lot, and you're right. There's really quick evolution, change is really happening fast with us, right? We're definitely in a crossroads, and on many crossroads, I think, right? And I think that there is a possible danger. All these possibilities are out there. Like, we could necessarily destroy ourselves. We could necessarily, it seems like the trend is towards echo chambers. And so everybody's kind of engaging in their own echo chamber. And we're tribal. It seems like, from my perspective, we're tribal sort of animals, right? We're a social animal. So we easily fall into whatever our tribe is. So, you know, you've got Muslims, Christians, Democrats, Republicans, whatever you want to say. And no one's really interested, I think, in the truth for the most part. I think people are interested in their echo chamber and their beliefs. And so it seems like right now there's no real rational direction that we're going in. Not that there really ever was. I'm not sure about. You know what I mean? I think that all human beings, you know, the largest part of our physical brain is, you know, the hippocampus. And this is where we have all of our emotional drivers, all of our, it's the strongest part of what guides us. Our executive functioning brain, our neocortex, makes up very little of it. It's really hard to be rational. It's really hard to be, aware and conscious of what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're mainly driven by our emotions. And because humans operate that way, physically, we haven't really evolved that much in the last, 10,000 years. We're still those same people. It's just now we have all this technology at our hands. So what are we going to do with it? And being that we're so emotionally driven, I'm afraid that we may just isolate ourselves even more into our tribes and create war and create conflict. That's why I do street epistemology. That's why I try to help people link their beliefs together. You know, let's train ourselves how to think first of all. You know, let's figure out what's the best method we can use to get where we want to go.
My freshman year, my sophomore year, I became an atheist, and maybe the last year of actually Bible college, my freshman year, I became an atheist. But when I went to secular school, that's whenever I kind of adopted like the title. I didn't know what I was at the time, but I had a philosophy teacher, and I guess I learned the absolute fundamental basics of thinking. And let's just say you get absolutely none of that growing up, certainly not in school, but what you get, especially from your family, is you get like, you learn stuff like sarcasm and rhetorical questions and things that don't really, it may sound like you'd be said in a debate, like we used to say you own someone, or I don't know, you ever heard this word? We used to say you got moded. Is that you ever heard that? Like, oh, you got moded, you got owned. But there was like this idea of like, you know, you just want to say something really witty or whatever, catch one off guard, and there's really no logic behind that. I mean, it sounds good. It's like being like a sophist, right? Where you can say something sounds really fancy, but you're not really saying anything of substance. And so, especially me growing up low class Latino, I had to unlearn a lot of that negative way of thinking. And but the thing is, most people don't get that opportunity to take philosophy and learn logic in a formal setting. So definitely, it's kind of amazing when you think about how far off people are from whenever you hear them arguing, like how many fallacies they could commit. Like if you could just learn the basic fallacies not to commit, you could have a much more meaningful conversation. So the next question I want to ask you is, what communities are you associated with, and why do you spend time in groups or chats or servers? Can you break any of that down for me, please?
Yeah, so Facebook is my main platform of operation. I think I'm part of Fight on the Fence, which is a debate group. I'm part of a chat with a street epistemologist. So obviously I'm in that. And other groups, so many atheist religious groups. I used to go in there and really debate and just like to have fun. It used to be a point because we do written debates, we do live debates out of it, and it was always fun for me. It's like playing chess, you know. And I debate atheists, I'll debate theists, I'll debate anybody on anything because it's just something I'm trying to get good at. It's kind of like you said, you want to learn what are the logical fallacies and how to avoid those and how to point them out and spot them. And the best way to train yourself in that is go and read a little bit of epistemology, read a little bit about philosophy, do Logic 101 course or something like that, and then apply it. Go out and debate people. You know, it's just fun. It's just use what you know to see how you can do. And if you lose, whatever the case is, but you can get better and better, just like with anything else. And so I joined these groups because I want to do that. Now, on a more serious situation, I kind of backed off debating a little bit because of the fact that it got boring for one thing. And the other thing, too, you start to wonder, what is the point? If it's not for fun, then what do we do? What am I doing? Am I just trying to stroke my own ego?
Right.
And that's not really anything that I'm too interested in. I mean, I like to do it for fun. I even like to lose because I like to learn. Right. But at this point, I don't know. I'd rather just have nice conversations with people.
You definitely learn the most by losing, just in life in general. Actually, I recently interviewed a life coach, and they said something very interesting. She said that in life, you only win and learn. Like those are the only two things that you ever do. And of course, we lose a lot of times, but she's saying, well, that you learn from that. And so those are the, if you change your perspective to think like that, it can be very helpful. But that being said, I do want to just talk about a few of these things. In Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, he talks about ways in which you could engage in a debate, one, without letting it be destructive, and with having like a meaningful conversation. So I want to read a few of these off. We don't have to discuss them, but just for the listener to hear. But welcome the disagreement. And when two people agree with everything, one of them is not necessary. So if there's some point that you haven't thought about, you can be thankful that the other person has brought it to your attention. And perhaps they can be correcting you from something that you have that's inaccurate. Okay. So this one's very important. Just trust your first impression, because it can often be wrong. So you also have to keep calm and watch out for your first reaction, because again, those can be wrong. But another one is don't become defensive, and don't attack the person, but rather the whatever ideas that you're going after. So this one's key, because I don't think people do this one much, but listen first and give your opponent, I call it just your partner, the chance to talk and let them finish, because we should be trying to build bridges of understanding and not building higher bridges of misunderstanding. So can you tell me, what do you think about those?
Those are really good ideas for having a good conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are kind of like golden rules for having a productive conversation.
Mm-hmm.
As far as a debate, the format of a debate is, like you said, you have an opponent,
Mm-hmm.
you're having a challenger. So the whole thing is the whole goal is to win. Like there's even been, for example, I do steel man debates. So I'll debate with a atheist or someone that agrees really with me. So I'm not really going to apply, some sort of, cordial, offering to them in order to, to make my point over to them. It's all about winning and losing. It's like, but as far as a good conversation, heck yeah, man, I agree with that, because I think people, like I said before, I think people are driven by emotions. So when you have a conversation with somebody, let's say you were to say something right now that I feel like, okay, he agrees with this. Now I can use that same thing against him in his point to show him where he's wrong. Right. So what I'll do is, instead of approach it that way, what I'll do is say, wow, yeah, you make a really good point about X. That's a really good point, man. Cool. I'm glad you brought that to my attention. And then let them feel good. Let them soak into that premise, right? And then when they come to talk about their belief, you can say, but remember you told me the X, right? And then that makes your point come across a little stronger, right? And it can move the person to be more agreeable with you, because they've invested themselves into that belief, not just you saying you need to believe this. No, you get them to actually say, this is what I believe,
And actually, Dale Carnegie talks about this. That's from the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. But he also talks about, whenever you're trying to get one big yes, like to build up with smaller yeses. This is just an example. I'm not going to get into this as far as the debate, but let's assume I'm pro-choice and I were talking to someone who's pro-life. Well, a question, or one of the yeses I might want to get out of them is by saying, like, you and I can both agree that we should be taking actions right now, right here and now, that will help either eliminate abortions or just drastically reduce them down to nothing, And so if you get them to agree on that point, right, then you can get them to go along with what you think, or try to find what's going to be the best solution to making that possible, because I'll tell you this, as someone who's a believer and would never want a single woman to get an abortion, like outlawing stuff is just, that's not the solution, It's like, You know what I mean? Like,
no, I understand 100%.
Because I've seen it here in South Korea where they outlaw abortion because their birth rate was so low. You know, the birth rate is just going down and down to where they can't even support their population. So the government says, aha, we'll fix this. We'll just ban it. And then women just go to China or Japan and get abortions there. So it's not like they really solved the problem, you know? So, so just saying like you're going to make stuff illegal is not really a solution, you know? It's like you got to get to the underlying causes of the problem. But anyway, that being said, okay, so speaking about the echo chamber, I recently had to drop the Discord server. Just in general, I just dropped the whole thing because essentially the echo chamber had happened, and even while I was preparing for it, do you know Oz, by the way?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So I was preparing for a debate with him, and my opening statement was, I think I might have told you about that because I don't ever debate people. I much rather prefer conversations like this. And but when I was preparing to debate him, one of the things that I said in my opening was that whenever you have echo chambers, there's a tendency to one, dismiss conflicting ideas, one, and two is to either tacitly or openly approve of behavior of people who you agree with, right? So for me, I don't care if you're a Christian or not. Like I'm on record and confronting Darth Dawkins about the way that he attacks people.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, because that's disturbing, and I don't care if you agree with me or not. That's irrelevant to me. It's like I don't care if my dad was doing that. If Darth Dawkins was my dad, I would still confront him on the issue. So that being said, I was preparing this opening statement, but one of the guys in the group said this to me, and he was basically referring to my belief in God, a very personal thing, as something like Dora the Explorer, but still watching Dora the Explorer as an adult. And he's like, oh, you'll get to one point in your life and you'll be like, well, I can't believe I'm still doing that as an adult. And then I was like, okay, like, that's fine. Like, you want to talk like that. I'm like, but don't think that I'm gonna have a conversation with you, like speaking in a condescending manner like that. And to me, we just met. So then he got really defensive that I had called him out on it. And then everybody came to his defense, even though it was just beyond obvious that what he was saying was demeaning to me. And so Oz actually came in to defend him as well. So after that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to just cancel the debate. This is not what I want to contribute in my life and my time, my energy to. So, and then I actually just deleted the whole Discord server because I had an interaction with Dart, I think that you watched. And first of all, I didn't even know it was being recorded.
Tom Rabbit, he recorded it. He records all of Darth Dawkins' interactions.
Yeah, I know that now. Hey, Tom Rabbit, you like to record people. Hey, Tom Rabbit. Yeah, so anyway, those are just conversations that I want to have. I definitely would prefer a conversation like this, but I would also be open up to debate, just to try it out as like a sport, you know? If you ever are interested in that, I would definitely be interested.
Yeah, sure. We
but
can do that.
I think we'd have a, like in this channel, it's like cross-talking is the number one rule we talk about. And so no cross-talking, to no attacking people personally, like attack the idea. Because I could love you as a person and say, I think atheism is idiotic, because I do. And you could say the same thing about me, but not attack me as a person. You know, you can disagree with me, right? So how would you weigh a ledger trying to consider what is the overall plus and benefits and minuses and demerits of religion? What do you think are the things that weigh the most on that scale? Okay. And how would you parse that?
So studying at religion, so there's two things for me, and you know, reasons are always sort of subjective. So one of the things is learning where people are coming from, learning what people have to say. So that's really important to me. And religion can obviously do that because religions have worldviews that they teach people. And so by engaging in a religion, you learn a lot about that worldview. and you understand that perspective. But the other thing too that I would weigh its value is whether it actually promotes growth or stagnation. If a religious belief promotes growth, as in we can increase our knowledge, we can progress in our beliefs, we can find out we're wrong, and it's a self-correcting system, then I think it's a valuable sort of tool. But if a religion, and as far as I know, most religions, unfortunately, are of the stagnant type. So religions are, God is unchanging. God is the same today, yesterday, and tomorrow. He never changes. Neither does his rules. And so the whole value there is, if we go around and we start changing our beliefs, it's almost like we're saying God was wrong before. And so they don't want to put God in that light. They want God to be absolutely correct, perfect in his knowledge, and unchanging. And so therefore, God's teaching from his holy book should be reflecting that, unchanging, and that's kind of stagnant. So for me, I don't personally, subjectively see value in a stagnant sort of system, belief system. I value change, evolution, and progress, but that's just me.
Right. That makes sense. One of the criticisms I have heard about religion is that it has slowed down scientific progress. And there is, first of all, that's obviously true. And really, a lot of it has not really been like very necessary. There is some kind of scientific progress that you could argue about. Let's see, like stem cells. Like we could have a very honest conversation about that. Yeah, I'm not a Catholic, but I can understand some of the points of their concern. I don't agree with them, but that's a conversation that's doable. Some of the stuff like back with Copernicus and Galileo, like that's just was really just totally unnecessary. Like there wasn't any kind of really morality that was at stake. It was just a matter of trying to have control and trying to hold on to a very small, limited interpretation of scripture. So I didn't, just being objective, I don't really see that as being necessary. But that being said, I do want to preface this by talking about South Korea. I live in South Korea, but I have been to North Korea on multiple occasions. And I do want to draw an analogy here, because in South Korea, it was basically cut in half, in the Korean War. And South Korea has become like filthy rich during this time, and North Korea has become very poor. And now the population in South Korea, because they can support a bigger population, is about twice the size of North Korea. North Korea has around 25 million people. South Korea has around 50 million people. And it just, there's a lot of luxury here. So that on the surface level is great. Obviously progress and the buildings in here, it's really great.
You mean evil capitalism?
Yes. Okay. But here's the negative side of that. If you think about what's going on, though, as far as our planet, as far as global warming, as far as waste and pollution, if you go to North Korea, you'll find most people there don't even have cars. So they just ride their bikes around. So there's a health element. You look around, there's a pristine environment. There's not trash and this and that. So, well, on one side, we could definitely, I won't for 2 seconds endorse or support what the North Korean government does, because it's very abusive. But if you take a look, this is one element in which at least the environment is being taken care of. There's not as much waste and pollution that's being produced as there is in South Korea. Okay, so there's that. Now, if I take that same kind of line of reasoning to religion and say, well, if we do not have any kind of moral considerations, if we really are just evolved beings, then really what is to take scientists from not cloning people or engaging in some really unethical scientific experiments and so on and so forth. So the fact that we do have, one, moral considerations to take, and two, maybe going overboard to the technology that people are going to continually desiring and inventing. Like, maybe that's not a good thing. Just think about where cell phones have taken us over the last 20 years. Like, how many times you could be out and literally have families sitting there on their phones together. You know what I mean? Just everyone on their phone. So, like, I'm not saying I'm against technology, but like, unadulterated technology can be a very, very bad thing. You know, what do you think about that?
The way I view it is like, capitalism is not good or bad or anything. It's just an economic system. That's all it is. You know, when you apply capitalism, what you do is you're competitive in the market, and whoever has the most, has the you know, supplies what people demand the most, is the winner.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line. And there is no moral, there are no morals baked into capitalism.
Social Darwinism.
So it seems, so what it is that at the social level, that's where we start to we can talk about how to use technology, how to use capital or money, how to do this kind of stuff. And those are ongoing conversations, and and naturally they change all the time, sometimes for the better, sometimes not. It seems like we have moral progress, I think, but that could just be from our subjective point of view. I mean, 100 years from now, they may look at some of the things that we believe today, kind of like how we look at slavery 100 years in our past, as really bad. But back then, that was just the norm. There was nothing immoral about slavery.
Right.
That was just how things got done for thousands of years. But it seems that now, all of a sudden, slavery is a bad thing. Why is it a bad thing? So our subjective opinion about things change. You know, it was even God said it was okay to own slaves, as long as you do it a certain way, and you know, you get your heathen from the nations around you. You can buy and sell them; they're your property. You can will them down to your children. You're giving these slaves a place to live. If you go and you kill, God said to the Israelites, you know, if you go and you kill the Amalekites, you can take a woman as your, a virgin as your wife, let her mourn her family that you killed for a month. But after that, hey man, it's okay. Now, by today's standards, we say that's immoral. That's horrible. How can we do that? Right. But what grounding do they say? What are they basing that on? How is someone who says morals are subjective, how are they saying that the Bible's wrong? How are they going to say that God was wrong? Right. So you see a lot of atheists will point out the evils of God, like slavery, like infanticide and things like that. What's wrong with it? How do they know it's wrong? How do they know it's wrong? If God said it was right, how do you know it's wrong? I don't think they have a really good answer for that. I think that basically our morals are evolving subjectively and relative to our society and culture. And so when you take that point of view, then anything goes. You can't say what's right and wrong. You can only say what's right and wrong by your opinion.
Right. So I'm not going to sit here for 2 seconds as a Christian and justify slavery. I think it was immoral now, and it was more back then. But I will say that there could be some ulterior explanations that maybe don't make as much sense on the surface value. But if you think about it with a little bit more reflection, maybe it makes a lot more sense why God would do something like that. For example, God could have commanded certain things that he wanted us to build up the moral courage to even defy him. That could be one thing that he's trying to do, or committing certain kind of genocide or whatever the stuff that he's done, so that people either one, they wouldn't believe in him, or there's at least a plausibility of maybe why he's not good. Because if you take a look at the scriptural explanation of heaven in Revelations, is that it describes God in heaven, and it says like there's not even a sun because his light is just like everywhere. Okay, so if God created you in heaven and you just constantly knew that he was everywhere and he was perfectly good, it would really diminish your value and your respect and your appreciation of him. So I do believe that.
Do you think that beings in heaven have a diminished value?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, the scripture absolutely says that they actually have jealousy towards humans. So you may think that would be perfect, but I can pretty much guarantee if you were born in that situation, you would have nothing to contrast. Like if you only felt like like hot weather, you would have no idea what cold weather would feel like. So if you were never hungry, you would never appreciate being full. So I do think that this time that we're having is an opportunity for us to experience loss and uncertainty that is going to ultimately be contrasted with heaven and God's perfection later on. So that's kind of like some theology that I've been working on myself that makes a little bit more sense, but ultimately
it's a good post hoc. It's what you call a post hoc rationalization. So what that is after the fact, after something's been written, in order to make it make sense, you rationalize it after the fact that it's been written. Not that what you're rationalizing is in the scripture, but that you're using your own, rational faculties to make it fit, to harmonize it, right? And a lot of religions do that. A lot of religions will go down that road, and there's a lot of other Christians that will, because I used to be the same way. I used to say that same thing, and then I met some Christians who said, yeah, but if you look at Revelations, it says the former things have come to pass and will not be remembered anymore. Nor will there be sorrow, tears, pain, suffering. These things will not be remembered. So if you can't remember those things and you're in heaven and you worship Yahweh day and night forever and ever for eternity, then we're back to square one with what you were saying about, value. And anyways, not that I have a dog in that game either way. I'm just saying that there's different ways that people post hoc rationalize anything. And maybe what they would say to you would be, well, hey, how do you know what it's like to be in heaven? How do you know God doesn't magically make people just happy like robots, like gleeful, happy robots? Which my problem with that is if that was possible in heaven, then what is the whole point and purpose of this earthly life? Why couldn't we have been created in that same situation? And then they'll say, well, because of free will. God wanted to create you to have free will, to choose evil, choose suffering, choose sin, so that you can learn and you can go to heaven knowing. But then we're back to square one again, because the scripture says those things will not be remembered. These same people are contradicting themselves when they argue that way.
Right.
So it's just the point that I'm making is that religion, the thing about religion that I find that just for me personally, that I don't find appealing is that it's unfalsifiable. Anything that you have a question about can always be harmonized or rationalized away. Whereas in science, you can't do that. It either works or it doesn't. It either meets a prediction or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then it's a bad hypothesis and it doesn't ever graduate to a working theory. Whereas in religion, for example, it used to be that the world was flat. It used to be that the world was the center of the universe. It used to be all this stuff. Then that changed after the Catholic Church, burned people to the stake and persecuted the natural philosophers of the time for it. Then it became accepted. After all, religion just adapted and post hoc rationalized the scriptures to meet the evidence. Same thing's going to happen with evolution. People are now kicking and screaming about evolution, or used to. I think 70% of Christians in the United States, something like that, accept evolution. Now they're what they call evolution, theistic evolutionists. So this is a big thing. Yeah. So now anything that science is going to find true that is maybe in contradiction to religious teaching will eventually be if a religion is really good, if a religion has that survival instinct baked into it, it will find a way to adapt to the science, and it will say stem cells are good. It'll say abortion is good. It'll go, it has no principle. It just has, it tries to say God is unchanging. In my opinion, it just seems like God is unchanging. He never changes, yet religions constantly evolve and change over time.
Well, this was what I was alluding to as far as the slavery or whatever, is that it could be the case. And mind you, you said, well, I'm saying this or I'm saying that now. I'm not saying anything for certain here. I'm just throwing out some arguments, rationality. Like it's not as illogical as you might think it is at first glance. Okay.
Right.
In fact, even take something like the Trinity. Okay. The Trinity, as far as what we can tell, doesn't make any logical sense. There's no coherence behind it. Now, it might be true. It might be 100% true. But if it is true from how we understand physics and logic and ontology, there's no way that we can understand it being stuck in a 3D perspective. Now,
right.
If you have a box and you're in a 4D perspective, you're in the fourth dimension, you would be able to see all sides of that box at the same time, okay? Whereas, I guess if we're humans, we could see like maybe 3 or 4 of the 6 sides at best. You know, there's going to be a whole other side of it that we were not going to be able to see. So if physicists tell us that there's 10, 11 dimensions, and we're stuck here in the third one, and maybe the fourth, you throw in time, there's still a lot that we just physically can't even interact and discover, you know? So, and it's you mentioned science, like our working model of the Milky Way galaxy can't account for 90% of the material in our galaxy. So there's some pretty dang big gaps that are still out there. It's not like this is totally even relatively close to being solved. You know, the jury's still out on a lot of things as far as science goes. So
it gives you room for faith. So in other words, if there's always a mystery there always is going to be a mystery, there's something we don't know.
Right.
Well, then that gives you've got a few options here. Mm-hmm. You can say, this gives me room for my faith to say God did it. Mm-hmm. Or this gives me room to say, I don't know. Mm-hmm. That by definition, it's a mystery. So a mystery by definition means I don't know the answer. So if I'm honest, I'll just say I don't know the answer.
Right.
But for a lot of people, they'll say, well, because we don't know the answer, therefore we know it's God. And I think that's just kind of a dishonest way to go about approaching that problem, because while it could be God and it could be a host of other models, we don't know which one it is. Right now, it's just imagination. Right now, any one of those solutions is an imaginary solution. And until we have the answer, for me, I'm just comfortable to say, I don't know.
Right.
You know, that's how
And you talked about faith, and I think that's a really good, place to mention faith, because atheists use this word very dishonestly. When you're talking about faith, it's like, it's just like, okay, we just put our hands over our eyes and just punch a keyboard that has a bunch of religions on it. And that's not at all, that's not even relatively close to what I think of when I think of faith. First of all, there's at least 10 different ways you could use faith. Okay. Say your wife is faithful. It was a faithful adaptation of the play, whatever. There's lots of different ways you could use faith. So this idea that you just have no evidence, that you just go off of nothing, that's totally inaccurate. Me, I've had an experience with Jesus Christ that changed my life. In that sense, I have absolutely zero faith that God exists. But there are some illogical elements and stuff that makes me scratch my head and say, like, well, like this does not really add up, like free will or Calvinism. Those actually both might totally be true, and it might be totally logical, but we wouldn't be able to wrap our minds around that concept, or as I said, with the Trinity. That may be true, and it may make 100% sense to God, and the physics may play out perfectly for God, but we're not going to be able to understand that. And so if I were to tell you that I was actually the fourth member of the Trinity, that that's not logically possible, right? Because the Trinity has 3 members. So if I'm the fourth member, that that's not accurate, right? But in Buddhism, they have these like sayings or riddles that are called Zen koans that are intended to try to like trick your logic to show you the futility of our ability to reason. Like for example,
it's called paraconsistent logic. Yeah.
So it's like, what's the sound of one hand clapping, right? Like something like that. So maybe God could create a triangle with 20 sides to it. Certainly from the way that we understand geometry, there's no way that's possible, right? But right.
Well, I think it just depends on the framework. Fundamentally, I don't know what's possible and what's not. Fundamentally, it could be that God could create a stone so heavy he couldn't lift it. Maybe in some possible world that's possible. But if we decide the framework is going to be classical logic with the classical rule set, and we start from there within that framework, then yeah, we can say no, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But if you're looking fundamentally beyond classic logic, say we take into account fuzzy logic, paraconsistent logic, modal logic, different logical frameworks, then it's a little harder to say what's possible and what's not.
Right.
Because we're talking about statements. So if you're saying a married bachelor, well, that's a contradiction as far as it's a contrary statement.
Right.
Not that such a thing couldn't exist. It's just that the statement itself sounds ridiculous. It's absurd because we're all going by a classical model viewpoint.
Right.
So it's a little bit hard. That's why I say, my view is that all arguments for and against anything is garbage. Arguments don't prove anything.
Right.
Arguments don't work. The only time they work is in a debate. And then when we have a debate and we have a framework that we agree on, then I can beat you in a debate, possibly. Because you've agreed, these are the rules, these are the logical framework we're going to go by. But if you were to ask me fundamentally, is it impossible for God to exist? I'd say I don't know, because I don't have that. I'm not omniscient,
right?
To know, and it's difficult.
So here's where my epistemology starts from. I say honestly, from living 10 years overseas, having visited dozens of countries, like I know that I know absolutely nothing. Like on my best day in the universe, the best I could ever hope to have is 1% of the available knowledge in the universe. That's like on my best day. My worst day is probably like in the half or 25 percentage points, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a reality. And you may be slightly better than me, but you're no more close to that. Even if we take the collective knowledge of everybody who's ever existed, just by mere definition that everyone who's ever existed has only existed on this planet, that just goes to show you, if we took everyone's knowledge, we still wouldn't know what's halfway across the other side of the universe, or even the actual size of the universe, you know?
I find a very big spiritual value in that. The fact that, look at it this way, humans on a range of vision, we have a very small range of understanding or seeing what's actually out there in the universe.
Right,
Like we
right.
can't see, like 95% of it is, we call it dark matter. It's just a label of something that we can't detect for some
Right.
reason. And this alone tells you that, you know, most of the world, most of reality is a big mystery to us. And what even evolution teaches us is that we don't evolve to know the truth about our reality. In fact, evolutionary game theory proves mathematically that creatures that know the truth, more truth about their environment, don't survive as well as those who don't. Creatures that don't know much about their environment and just know enough that nature wants them to know are the ones that survive. And so it's a big presumption to say that we know the truth because we see it with our own two eyes or we hear it with our two ears or whatever the case may be. Our sense organs are limited. Our mind is limited. This is why I'm an agnostic about most ontological claims. And I think this is a beautiful thing. It's part of the spiritual journey, is that here we are on a plane of existence. We just happen to be a conscious awareness that exists in the universe, in reality somewhere, and it appears the way it does. It has rule sets that it does. And we're going through this reality together in this shared experience, and we're learning from each other, we're growing with each other, and we're moving on. I think that's a beautiful thing, but it's a very dangerous thing. And it comes, though, with a lot of beauty. It comes with a lot of subjective beauty and subjective pain and suffering. It's a mixed bag, but it is what it is. But one thing it's not that we're omniscient. It's that we by definition live with a lot of freaking ignorance.
There's a lot of gaps.
And I'm just the best way, the most safest way I can be. If my agenda is to be honest, then the safest thing for me to say is I don't know.
Right.
Because that's probably the best thing I could say.
Right.
Honest thing to say, rather.
I say that a lot in this podcast, and it makes some people uncomfortable that I will say a lot of things, but it's just the truth. I mean, I could BS an answer to you. I could pull something out of my buttocks, but I speculate. I definitely do speculate. I do come up with some theories of my own, but at the end of the day, a lot of stuff I just don't know. And the last question I have is how important is empathy and respect in our interactions with people online, especially in some heated debates. This has been a very civil debate, but if you think about this, like empathy, you could never really have empathy for another person, truly, because there is sides, like you might understand, let's say my mom died and your mom died. You can understand that feeling, right? You could subjectively understand that, but you would never be able to understand truly what that was for me. Like I might be much closer to my mom than you were to your mom. So there's no real way to actually compare that properly. So whenever you start with that and you understand that we're never going to be able to understand each other perfectly, but what we can do is take the time to try to, we could take the time to talk about our past and not just boil down to the facts. Like we like to talk about a lot of biographical stuff and try to talk about topics that we know that we're going to agree on, such as how to fight bullying or stuff like that. Sometimes we might talk about music or movies or stuff like that, just some neutral ground. But yeah, so what do you think about respect and empathy? Because so in that sense, I would tell you this: I don't think that the empathy is possible in the true sense of the word. But one thing that we have total empathy on the fact is that we don't have all the information, so we can check that one off. We agree on that one. Two is though that we're fallible, and you and I are both filled with misinformation. I can guarantee you that there's facts that you and I think that we believe that are not accurate. Okay. And so we could learn something from an expert and it would totally change our opinion on something. So there's that. And there's just the fact that we're fallible, we're going to die, and we're going to miss our families that die. And so let's try to relate and humanize people as we're trying to traverse the universe and learn and explore. So what do you think about that, Scott?
Man, I think that's beautifully said, man. I think that's resonating with me because subjectively, I like having good conversations. So I like to support people, and I like good people, and I like honest people, and I like open people. And so I want to be empathetic to them. Thank God we're not fully empathetic to each
Thank
other.
God.
Can you imagine? Man, we would be crying every day, or we'd be a mixed bag of emotional roller coaster every day. Luckily, we only know our own experience firsthand. We can only relate to other people based on what we have also experienced. So someone who's experienced religion, I understand why people, are confident in their beliefs and what they mean by it. And I'm also on the unbeliever side. So I understand when I talk to atheists or agnostics, what they mean when they say certain things. And a lot of it is just a bad form of communication. Like when the guy told you about Dora the Explorer. Now, maybe one person could argue that, well, I wasn't saying that you were ridiculous or absurd. Maybe he was saying that. I don't know. But someone could say, well, he was just trying to say that's how I looked at religion. Like it's like now I look at it like a cartoon or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, that's not good communication, though, because that communication is not very empathetic. Because
Right.
even if you were not trying to hurt your feelings or put you down in some kind of way, you should always try to pick your words carefully
Right.
and be more thoughtful. What's going to progress the conversation forward? Is it going to be an empathetic attitude,
Yeah.
or is it going to be just I'm just going to lay it out the way I see
Yeah.
it kind of attitude? Like, what is your intention there? I think you have to get your intention in check when you go into this stuff,
Yeah. No, that's really good. And I do want to close off by saying a couple of things here. One, first of all, thank you very much for your interaction. You are like, I feel like you're like an inversion of me, like leaning more towards the direction of atheism or agnosticism. But I am obviously a theist. I obviously believe in God, but I do have very similar thoughts to you. We might diverge in one sense because I've had, and you've got to hear about my experience. I've had a Pauline experience in conversion to Jesus Christ. So in that sense, I'm no longer in the dark on some of the things that maybe some people might have questions about, but that raises 1,000 other questions in my mind, because the Black atheist guy who I was telling you about was telling me that, like, I didn't care about people because I've had this experience with God, and God's doing these things for me, and he doesn't do things for other people. And I'm like, hey, I didn't, like, I'm not in control over any of this. Like, God had these experiences. I've had these experiences. Doesn't mean that I don't care about people. It doesn't mean that I don't love people, even people who I disagree with, So
you're just honest. Yeah.
I'm as honest as I could possibly be. And I do want to close off with telling you this, though, because part of the problem started in the atheist community, in the server, because I was asked my opinion about the transsexual issue, or just the LGBTQ community. And I was like, well, as a believer, I obviously am not supportive of it. But on the other hand, I don't believe in passing laws to hurt people. And I believe hate speech should be illegal. And I'm like, I don't agree with any of that. And I don't agree with trying to attack people or trying to hurt people. But I'm like, on the other hand, like, because I don't agree with it, I'm not going to use pronouns that are, first of all, I'm not going to misgender someone intentionally trying to hurt them. Because when I see Christians doing that, I think is incredibly hurtful, and it's just not right. I don't agree with that in the slightest sense of the word. But on the other hand, I was like, well, you know what? This would be violating my own conscience if I were to affirm the gender that they're espousing, that they're claiming that they have, or I'm going to say that they have now, right? So in the course of these conversations, it came to my attention that some of the way that I've spoken about this has been considered transphobic. I don't consider it transphobic because I know I don't have any ill will towards these people or anybody, even Kim Jong-un. I don't have, like, I might disagree with an aspect of their life, but it doesn't mean I have any hatred towards the person, you know? So I know my intentions in that sense is not to hurt anybody, but the way that it's been explained to me is that the way that I maybe express myself is, one, it comes off as that. Two is like I get lumped into the category of the right wingers who want to hurt people, and I certainly don't want to be in that kind of category with them. So as a result of these conversations, I have came to the conclusion that even if I don't personally accept that a very small thing I could do that's not going to inconvenience me a whole lot is to use the preferred pronouns in which they have, and just to give that bit of affirmation that I care about you and that I am, I don't want to say supporting, like it's a tricky subject, but just that being said,
I understand. It's all good. I mean, the thing is that there's a lot of baggage that comes along with labels and things like that. Like I was talking to a theist not long ago, and you know, he was riding me about, you know, abortion and conservatism, and what he didn't understand is I'm against abortion too. I find abortion immoral.
Yeah.
And I'm for small government. And I've repeated this stuff to him like 5 or 6 times, and it went right past his head. He just kept arguing with me as though I'm for abortion. He didn't listen to me because he puts the label unbeliever or agnostic or atheist, and he puts that into a category of people that believe abortion is good, that believe, you know, in democratic, you know, politics. All these assumptions go right along with the label, and my words cannot cut through that. No matter how much I tell you, that's not what I believe. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing with my interview the other night you saw with the 5 hours. The guy kept saying, oh, you just don't like absolutes. Oh, you just don't like analogies. Oh, you just don't because atheists are this way and that way. And it's like, I just got done telling you like 1,000,000 times, I believe in absolutes. I believe in, otherwise I wouldn't have a foundation to say what's right or wrong if I didn't assume an absolute. And he's like, yeah, but you don't really believe in absolutes and blah, blah, blah. It's like people on both sides, they're going to look at you as a theist, Isaiah, and they're going to say, there's no way that this guy is not prejudiced against trans people. He hates them. I don't care how much he says he's, you know, empathetic and he doesn't want to hurt anybody. It doesn't matter. This guy is a born again Christian, right? That means that he hates us. And that's all they see. It doesn't matter what you say. And you have to understand that going in, most people, that's how they think. They don't connect the dots. They don't listen. Well, first of all, they don't listen to their interlocutor, apparently. And they can't grant you that you're telling the truth. It's like I have some people tell me that I actually believe in God. But, you know, I believe in the Christian God, in fact. And they'll say that you're just suppressing it. It's just you're suppressing that knowledge. It's like, well, if it's suppressed, then how could I know it? You know, and it's like, I'm genuine here. I'm honest. I'm trying to tell you how I really feel, but people don't want to hear it, you know?
So I've had a lot of conversations. I feel like I could talk to you for the next 5 hours, honestly. We normally wrap it up an hour and 10 minutes. So I am going to wrap this up.
Yeah, sure.
But the way in which you reason is very honest, it's very sincere, it's very legit, and you ask very legitimate questions. You have a very good way of coming to your conclusions. Like, I respect that. I respect that more than someone who says like, oh, I'm a Christian because you know, like my parents are Christians, and it just, if you try to get to the bottom line of why they believe in it, they really can't give you a solid answer. You know, they really can't even define things properly. So I have more respect for people like you who are taking the time to reason through and to try to think about these things. Like that's more, I don't want to use what word I want to use here. That's more noble in my opinion, because I normally have an atheist co-host. I told you about that. Sometimes I just want to talk to people one-on-one. So I'm talking to you right now. But I've said about my atheist co-hosts, like, I disagree with this guy on a lot of things, but one thing I respect the living hell out of is the fact that he has a very tenacious way of coming to his conclusions, right? And it's fine if we can agree to disagree on some points, but I do want to close off to the last thing that we say, that I say on this podcast is this last week, he told me, because I told him about the interaction that I had with the guy in the door, the explorer, and he had actually, in our second interaction, had made the comparison between believing God and believing in Santa Claus as a kid. And then he was like, I'm pretty sure at some point you're going to get older and be like, that probably wasn't the greatest idea in the world. Like, it's probably immature or whatever. And our conversation was going very well up to that point. And then at that point, it just went completely downhill. And so we were talking about the problem of evil, and then just he interjected with that. And then I became extremely defensive. And that's what happens whenever you feel like you're getting your intelligence attacked, that you want to respond back, and you turn into a flight or fight mentality. And it's different from the rest and digest mentality that you can have. You can't be as rational in the flight or flight mentality. You just can't, it's a very defensive, it's a very, I need to either confront the situation or get out of it, So, and I'm someone who I don't like to have those kind of confrontations. So that being said, he just told me, which I was so touched beyond, I'm just getting chills just thinking about it. But he said, you know what, Isaiah, he says, after our conversations, I have come to the conclusion that that's not a way I should be talking to people. Like that's demeaning. And so he told me that through this podcast, he's been able to change his perspective. And when I told him about my evolution for lack of a better word, with the trans issue, it's clear that we're both learning from this process. So that's something I want to thank you for contributing to today. Well, and you, I think we have many, many more talks ahead in the future. I think I'm going to have to come on your channel next. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's right. We'll do that. Maybe we can do it next week.
In fact,
like Friday if you want.
Yeah, can you tell me how I could find you?
Yeah, it's on the Borg Skeptic channel, and the show is called Exploring Epistemology with Scott Williamson, and it comes on every Friday at 7 Central Time. So that's 8 Eastern Time in the US. So yeah, I don't know if that's a little late for you.
We'll work
because it is live,
Could you have picked a better acronym for the Borg Skeptic? Could you have picked the skeptic Borg person or something?
No? I have no say in that.
That is not quite as bad, and this is true. You could Google this. There's a group called the Muslim, or I think it's called the Moran Islamic Liberation Front.
Yeah.
Literally. Did you
a lot of these names? Yeah.
No,
yeah. It's
the MI Liberation Front. It's literally spelled out MILF. I'm like, man, this is probably written in Arabic or something.
The BS show. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of these acronym or the names of these shows come about in really weird ways. Like I have a moniker Doubtfire, and people are always like, why would you call yourself Doubtfire? That sounds like Miss Doubtfire on that movie with what's his name, and it's like, well, people just kept calling me Doubtfire, and it just caught on, and it just went on. And Borg Skeptic, Katie, she was really into Star Trek, and she used to be of the Jehovah's Witness and felt like she was in the Borg like I did. So now she's skeptical of the Borg, so that's how that whole thing came out.
So the organization is based in the Philippines. They're actually called the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. So yeah, it's actually a real thing. That being said, I would like to schedule another talk with you and my co-host because he's a former Mormon, and we could have some very interesting talks there. Really want to thank you for your time. We're going to send you out a Starbucks card. Can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on here. This has definitely been in my top 2 or 3 favorite podcasts that I've had so far because it's just been so reasonable. We haven't got heated. We haven't got angry. And, this is very respectful. So that being said, don't forget to visit our website at www.rhepodcast.com. You can look us up on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, actually. So don't forget to subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and leave us a comment about maybe about the content that we've had here. If you have any questions that we might be able to answer in the future, or if you have another idea for a podcast, or if you'd like to come on as a guest. So that being said, thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again. Goodbye.